In this section, we'll talk about smart contracts. Smart contracts are the most powerful innovation in the blockchain technology world since Bitcoins. Smart contracts allow blockchains to operate on different domains other than just the financial transfer of money transactions. So, to define smart contracts, we have to answer questions like what are smart contracts, what are their legal status, how typical smart contracts work, and how high level technical capabilities are implemented. We can have a discussion about that. So, when we talk about the Indian context, a contract is a combination of an offer and an acceptance. An offer and an acceptance forms what is called a promise, and a promise constitutes of a promiser and a promisee. Once a promise has been arrived at and a consideration for the promise has been decided, you can combine the consideration and the promise into an agreement. And agreements which are built in a way that they can be legally enforced become contracts. So this is the definition as far as the legal terminology is concerned. When this legal contract that we just talked about, when it can be converted into its digital representation by identifying the promiser and promisee, laying down the consideration and the terms, and also identifying any third parties, and then defining them in a format that's programmatic and converting that program into a digital executable code results in creation of a smart contract. When this digital representation, which could be code written in any programming language like JavaScript or Java or Golang or Solidity, when it's put on the blockchain as an executable code that's residing on the ledger, then it becomes a smart contract. And this process is called deployment. Once it's deployed and it's living as a contract on the blockchain, any participant can execute the contract by sending a transaction to the address of the contract. And we'll see this process in the Ethereum execution of smart contracts. So this transaction forms the trigger to run some function on the contract, just like you would call a function on any programming language. Now this execution of the smart contract is also saved as a transaction on the blockchain, which means if someone executed a smart contract, their identity along with the contract and parameters of the contract execution form a part of the blockchain, which means that the contract execution is as transparent as transfer transactions on the blockchain. This is something that makes smart contracts very powerful. Smart contracts are obviously transparent because they are on the blockchain. They can be audited because of their transparency and the transactions transparency, and then they are enforceable because they can be executed. They are executable code that can be executed on the blockchain. Smart contracts are self-executing. So the moment we send a transaction to a contract, it can execute itself, and that makes it very, very important. There are claims that are made that smart contracts are laws, digital laws, and to some extent that's true because smart contracts execute exactly according to the execution flow that's defined in the contract on the blockchain. A certain execution is recorded exactly like the transaction timestamp is recorded. which makes it further beneficial for auditability and enforceability, because the date of execution is an important part of a contract, either related to its terms or just for transparency purposes. So some of the things that get recorded as an execution data for the contract is the contract's input and the contract's output, its execution block time or the execution timestamp, and who executed the smart contract. So all of these come out of the box as smart contracts get executed, which is what makes it very important for any system that needs auditability and transparency to implement smart contracts for its business purposes. Some of the typical contracts that are put on the blockchain are auction contracts, which need transparency, voting and elections, which are again dependent on transparent count of votes, brokerage, mediation, asset tracking, obviously cryptocurrency, and any sort of record keeping that needs audits and transparency. Typically, when we talk about let's say an election contract, the basic functions that it might have is add elections. Once an election is added with the candidates, then letting others vote on the candidates, and then finally counting all votes to decide a winner. So these are exactly the transactions that can be operated upon when we are implementing the voting contract. Similarly, when it comes to auctions contract, you can have a create auction, place bid, and sell transactions. When it comes to currency, you would have the ability to transfer, the ability to mint more currency, and retrieve the balance owned by a certain account on an address as basic functions that should be implemented. The legality of the smart contracts are still under discussion as of this session. If you talk about Indian context, Information Technology Act of 2000 defines that smart contracts are not legal, but at the same time the same Information Technology Act allows certifying authorities to be recognized, and any certifying authority can execute smart contracts also, which means that there is some level of legality that's still possible in smart contracts, but that's not been challenged in courts till yet. As far as the legality discussion goes, there has been ongoing efforts by the government to create some sort of awareness and progress towards recognition of contracts. From 2017 with the RBI white paper on blockchain tech and finance minister's speech on bitcoins in 2018, mid of 2018 RBI circular and banning of cryptocurrencies, government is constantly studying the feasibility of contracts, blockchains and cryptocurrencies, and evolving towards a legal framework that defines the importance of blockchains. So the general consensus is that blockchains are good, but cryptocurrencies are not favored from the legal community standpoint. Now what we'll do is we'll jump into some of the technology implementations and demonstrations of smart contracts, and we'll try to understand how smart contracts work in the next section. Thank you.